He laughed, in front of his executives, in front of the whole room. The powerful director threw his head back and laughed at a poor girl who dared to say she knew 6 languages. To him, it was a joker street girl claiming something far beyond her place. The room joined in, mocking her, shaming her, tearing down her dignity. Her cheeks burned, her heart shattered, but she stood there silent, holding on to the only thing she had left, her truth. 6 languages, a gift born not of privilege, but of struggle, of nights spent under candlelight, of survival itself. What they didn't know was that the very gift they mocked would soon become the lifeline of the entire company. In the hours that followed, when millions of dollars and the future of every man in that room hung by a thread, it was not the director, not the executives, not the money or power that saved them. It was the poor girl they had shamed. And what happened next didn't just save a company, it shook every soul who witnessed it. This is her story. In the heart of a bustling city stood a towering corporate building with mirrored glass walls that reflected both dreams and despair. Inside that building, every floor buzzed with ambition. People walked fast, dressed sharp, speaking with authority, as if each word was a key to power. But among them walked a girl who didn't fit the mold. Her clothes were plain, her shoes worn, her hands roughened from work that had nothing to do with polished desks or glowing screens. Her name was Amina. She was the daughter of a street vendor, raised in poverty so deep that every breath was a fight for survival. Yet hidden inside her fragile frame was a gift few could even imagine. She knew 6 languages. Not just words, but fluency, the kind that could bridge nations, unlock opportunities, and connect souls. But no one ever looked deep enough to see that. When she first entered the company building for an interview, her heart pounded against her chest. The elevator ride seemed endless, carrying her toward a future she desperately needed. Her family's rent was overdue, her younger brother's school fees unpaid, and her mother's medicine bottles stood empty. A job here could mean survival. She clutched the thin folder that carried her resume, short, unimpressive, except for one striking line, fluent in 6 languages. She stepped into the director's office, where a panel of executives sat like judges waiting to strike. At the center was the director himself, a man known for his ruthless pride. His suit was perfect, his smile sharp, his eyes scanning Amina as though she were beneath him. He leaned back in his chair, his voice cutting. "So," he said slowly, "you claim you know 6 languages?" Amina nodded nervously. "Yes, sir." The director chuckled. It wasn't a laugh of delight. It was mockery, loud enough to echo in the room. 6 languages. A poor girl like you. Do you expect us to believe that? The executives joined in with smirks, their pens tapping impatiently. Her cheeks burned. She wanted to explain, to prove herself, to tell them about the nights she studied by candlelight, the neighbors who taught her fragments of their mother tongues, the books borrowed from old libraries, the radio stations in foreign languages she listened to until the words made sense. But she froze. The laughter in the room cut deeper than knives. The director leaned forward. "We're not looking for fairy tales here. This is a company built on results, not childish imagination. 6 languages. Tell me, do you think that makes you valuable?" Amina swallowed her fear. I only want a chance," she whispered, but her voice was drowned out by another burst of laughter. "A chance," the director said. "Young lady, people here have degrees, experience, networks. What do you have?" A claim that sounds more like a joke. He pushed her resume aside as though it were trash. "You can leave now." Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. She gathered her folder, bowed her head slightly, and walked out. Behind her, the sound of laughter followed like a curse. Outside the building, she stood frozen, the cold wind biting her face. She had been shamed for the very gift she carried. To them, she was just a poor girl pretending to be more than she was. But fate has a way of turning humiliation into destiny. The next day, chaos struck the company. An emergency meeting was called. Foreign investors had arrived unexpectedly. The company had been preparing for months to sign a critical deal, but the translators scheduled for the meeting hadn't shown up. The investors, from different countries, spoke a mix of languages. No one in the room could understand them fully, and the negotiations started to crumble. Tempers rose. Millions of dollars, the company's reputation, perhaps even its survival, were at stake. The director sat pale-faced at the head of the table. For the first time, his arrogance cracked. He had power, he had money, He had everything, but he couldn't speak a word of the languages flying around the room. His executives whispered desperately, flipping through dictionaries, trying apps on their phones, but it was useless. The investors began to stand, ready to walk away, and then a voice spoke, soft, hesitant at first, but clear. The room turned. It was Amina. She had come to return a forgotten paper she had dropped the previous day. Standing by the door, she had heard the storm unfolding, and without thinking, she began to translate. Her words flowed like water, shifting seamlessly from one language to another, carrying meaning across barriers like a bridge of light. The investors paused, eyes widening. They nodded, relief washing over them as communication returned. The director's jaw dropped. His mocking laughter from yesterday echoed in his mind, replaced by the shock of realization. The girl he had dismissed, poor girl he had shamed, was now saving the very company he led. But that moment, when Amina's voice filled the boardroom with 6 languages, was only the beginning. What would follow would not only shatter the pride of those who had mocked her, but also reveal a power inside her that no one, not even Amina herself, knew she possessed. The boardroom fell into stunned silence as Amina's words flowed, breaking the chaos that had nearly destroyed the meeting. She stood at the edge of the room, her posture timid, yet her voice unwavering, weaving one language into another with such precision that even seasoned diplomats would have struggled to keep pace. Each investor leaned forward, their tension melting into relief, their eyes shifting from frustration to admiration. For the first time since entering the building, Amina was not invisible. She was the center dot. The director's face tightened. Only yesterday, he had laughed at her. Only yesterday, he had treated her like dirt beneath his polished shoes. And now, the very gift he had mocked was saving everything he had built. His laughter had died, replaced by a silence heavy with shame. The negotiations moved forward like a river once clogged, now set free. Complex terms were discussed, contracts revised, promises exchanged, and Amina carried every word across nations. By the time the investors stood to sign, their smiles told the story. The deal was secured. The company had been saved from ruin. When the meeting ended, the room erupted with applause. But it wasn't for the director. It was for the poor girl. He had ridiculed. Executives who had smirked at her now looked at her with awe. Investors reached out to shake her hand, thanking her in their own tongues, which she answered fluently, leaving them astonished. The director rose slowly, his pride shattered. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Miss Amina, is it? Please, come forward." She hesitated, clutching her worn folder against her chest. She stepped closer, her eyes downcast, unsure if this was another trick meant to humiliate her. But the director's face had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something roffier and regret. "You just saved this company," he said, his words stumbling. "Without you, everything would have collapsed." He paused, swallowing hard. "I was wrong." The same man who had mocked her, who had laughed as though her talent was nothing but a lie, now stood before her with his head lowered. The sight struck the executives like a thunderclap. Never had they seen the director humbled. Amina lifted her gaze, her eyes shimmering but strong. "You didn't believe me," she said softly. "You laughed. You all did. But my father used to say, the world mocks what it does not understand. I studied because I had no choice. I learned these languages because survival demanded it. And today, the very thing you called useless became the only thing that mattered." Her words cut deeper than any blade. The room went silent again, this time out of respect. The director's hands trembled slightly. He extended them toward her. "Please," he said, "forgive me. And allow me to offer you a position here. Not just any position, a permanent role, with salary and honor worthy of your gift. We need you. I need you." Gasps filled the room. The man who had humiliated her was now begging for her place at his side. But Amina did not rush to accept. She thought of her mother, waiting at home, medicine still unfinished. She thought of her younger brother, holding on to his dreams with fragile hope. She thought of the long nights she had spent alone, repeating foreign words until her tongue bled, while the world outside dismissed her as nothing. She took a deep breath. "I will accept," she said finally, "not because you need me, but because my family needs this chance. But remember this, sir, never again laugh at the poor. For sometimes, it is the poor who carry treasures no one else sees." Her voice echoed in the boardroom like a prophecy. From that day forward, everything changed. Amina was no longer the girl standing in the shadows. She became the bridge that held the company together in a world divided by borders and tongues. Her translations brought deals that no one else could. Have secured. Her presence turned foreign visitors into loyal allies. And with every success, the same executives who once mocked her now looked at her as the lifeline of their future. But the greatest change was in the director himself. Every time he entered a room and saw her, he remembered the laughter that had once left her cheeks burning. It haunted him. In his silence, he carried the weight of shame. People whispered that he had been broken that day, not by failure, but by the truth of a poor girl's power. Months passed, and Amina's name spread beyond the walls of the company. She was invited to conferences, recognized by leaders, praised in newspapers. Yet despite the fame, she remained the same humble daughter who returned home to care for her family, who still walked the same narrow streets, who still believed that dignity was not found in wealth but in how one treated others. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Amina stood outside the towering building where her life had changed. The glass walls reflected her image, not of a poor girl anymore, but of a woman who had risen above shame and mockery. She whispered to herself, "They laughed, but I endured." And in the end, endurance is the language the world understands best. Inside, the director watched her from his office window, his heart heavy. He knew he could never erase what he had done, but he also knew that her presence was the greatest lesson of his life. That arrogance can destroy, but humility can rebuild. And that, sometimes, the one you mock most is the one destined to save you. Thus, the girl who once walked into the building with trembling hands left a legacy of courage, proof that no gift is small, no voice worthless, and no soul defined by poverty. She had been shamed for knowing 6 languages, but in the end, it was those very 6 languages that shook everyone, changed everything, and carved her name into the story of the company forever. Weeks turned into months, and Amina's presence became the lifeblood of the company. Deals that once seemed impossible now flowed with ease. Each time she opened her mouth, switching languages like melodies, she reminded everyone that greatness could be hidden in the unlikeliest of souls. But deep inside, she carried the memory of that first day, the laughter, the humiliation, the sting of being shamed. It was no longer a wound. It had become her fire. She knew the world was filled with others like her, poor yet gifted, invisible yet carrying light. For them, she stood tall. One afternoon, the company gathered for a grand event. The investors who had once nearly walked away had returned, not for contracts this time, but to honor the woman who had saved everything. The hall was filled with applause as her name was called. Amina walked to the stage, her simple dress a sharp contrast to the glittering suits around her, but her presence outshone them all. She looked out over the crowd and paused. Then she spoke, her voice steady, each word carrying the weight of her journey. "You once laughed when I said I knew 6 languages, but I tell you today is not the number of languages that matters. It is the voice you choose when others try to silence you. I was shamed, yet I endured. And because I endured, I stand here, not just for myself, but for every girl the world has tried to hide." The hall erupted with applause, yet she raised her hand gently, quieting them. "Do not clap for me," she continued softly. "Clap for every child who studies under candlelight, for every dreamer told they are worthless, for every voice mocked before it can be heard. Because when they rise, the world will shake just as it shook today." The crowd stood, tears shining. In their eyes, even the director, seated at the front, rose with trembling hands. He wiped his face, no longer ashamed of his tears. The man who once mocked her was now the man forever changed by her strength. After the event, as the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, the director approached her quietly. His voice broke as he whispered, "I laughed at you once, but that laughter will haunt me forever. You are the reason we stand today. I owe you not just the company but my soul's awakening." Amina looked at him, her expression calm. "Then, honor me by never laughing at the poor again. See them, believe in them. That is all I ask." He nodded, his head bowed like a penitent man before a teacher. That night, Amina returned home. Her mother's eyes lit up when she entered. Her brother ran to her side, and for the first time, she felt the heavy chains of poverty begin to crack. She had not only saved a company, she had saved her family, and in doing so, saved herself. Standing by the window, looking out at the city lights, she whispered to the stars, "They tried to shame me, But I was never the shame. I was the answer. And so, the poor girl once mocked for knowing 6 languages became the story the world would never forget. She had turned humiliation into triumph, laughter into silence, and shame into a lesson. That shook everyone who witnessed it, because sometimes it is the very voice the world tries to silence that speaks the loudest. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories every week. Leave a like if you believe no voice deserves to be silenced. Share this video with someone who needs hope. Today it might change their life. Follow us, join our journey, and let's keep these stories alive together. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of Legacy Ignited.